Have you ever had that feeling that something bigger is happening in your life? That inexplicable sense that even in the toughest times, an unseen hand seems to be guiding your steps? What if I told you that Pope John Paul II revealed exactly how to identify when God is quietly working in your life, even when you think he's absent? Today, I'm going to share with you a powerful insight that has changed the lives of thousands and can completely transform how you see the events of your day-to-day life. Just imagine, a woman named Lucy was about to accept a job that seemed perfect. Good salary, great location, everything she ever wanted. But then suddenly, the company rescinded the offer. She was devastated, not understanding why God would allow such a disappointment. 3 weeks later, she received an even better offer at a company where she met her future husband and developed a brilliant career. What seemed like a closed door was, in fact, God protecting her from a path that wasn't the best for her. Pope John Paul II revealed 7 specific signs that show when God is acting in our lives. These signs are so precise and revealing that once you learn to identify them, you'll never see your spiritual journey the same way again. And the most impressive thing is, these signs are happening right now in your life. But maybe you aren't noticing them. What you'll discover today isn't typically taught in most churches. This is profound knowledge that the Holy Father shared in more intimate moments and that few have had access to. If you're facing doubts, difficult decisions, or simply want to better understand God's plan for your life, this video was made especially for you. Before we continue, I'd like to know, have you ever felt at some point in your life that God was guiding your steps, even in situations that seem negative at first? Share your experience in the comments. Your testimony might be exactly what someone needs to read today. The first sign that Pope John Paul II taught us to recognize is the unexpected detours in our lives. He said, when doors close and paths change, it's not because God has abandoned you, but because he is protecting you from following routes that are not part of his perfect plan for you. These moments when our plans seem to fall apart are actually divine interventions to put us on the right path. Think of Anthony, a man from Atlanta who missed his flight to an important business meeting. He was furious, thinking he had lost the opportunity of his life. Later, he discovered that the plane had encountered serious technical issues, putting all the passengers in great danger. What seemed like a terrible setback was, in reality, divine protection. The Pope explained that God, in his infinite wisdom, sees what we cannot see. Imagine him being at the top of a mountain, seeing the whole path, while we can only see a few steps ahead. When he closes a door, it's not to frustrate us, but to protect us from something that wouldn't be good for us. How do you identify this sign in your life? Pay attention to plans that inexplicably don't materialize. Sometimes we feel an inexplicable resistance, as if an invisible force is preventing us from following a certain path. At first, this may seem frustrating, but over time, we realize that we were spared from situations that wouldn't be beneficial. The interesting thing is that often, shortly after these detours, new opportunities arise, much better than the previous. Once it's as if God is saying, "Trust me, I have something much better in store for you." This is one of the clearest ways to perceive the hand of God guiding our journey. A woman named Martha shared that she was rejected 3 times when trying to adopt a child. She was discouraged and didn't understand why God allowed so much frustration. Months later, she met twins who needed a home, and today they are her children. Looking back, she understands that the previous no's were part of the divine plan to form the family she has today. Remember, when your plans are interrupted, don't despair. Look up and say, "Lord, I trust that you have something better for me." This trust opens our eyes to perceive the true path that God is tracing for us. The second sign that Pope John Paul II taught us to recognize is the clarity of vision that gradually emerges in our life. He explained, God illuminates our understanding step by step. When you move from confusion to clarity about your purpose in life, recognize this as the work of the Holy Spirit. It's as if a fog is slowly dissipating, revealing a path that we couldn't see before. Carl, a young man from Phoenix, spent years feeling lost in his career. He graduated with a degree in business administration, but something always seemed to be missing. He prayed for guidance, but the answers didn't seem to come. One day, while volunteering at a hospital, he felt an inexplicable clarity. His purpose was to work with sick children. Today, after a second degree, he is a respected child psychologist in hospitals and says he has never doubted his calling again. The Pope taught us that this clarity rarely comes like a lightning bolt. Usually it's like dawn. The light gradually appears, illuminating first one aspect, then another, until we can see the whole picture. It's a process that requires patience and attention to the small signs that God is revealing. How to perceive this sign? You begin to notice that certain thoughts persist in your mind. Ideas that previously seemed confusing begin to make sense. Different people start telling you the same things, confirming directions you were considering. It's as if pieces of a puzzle begin to fit together, forming an increasingly clear picture. An important characteristic of this sign is the peace that accompanies this clarity. When the direction comes from God, even if the path is challenging, there is an inner peace that confirms that we are on the right path. As the Pope said, the truth of God always brings peace to the heart, even when it challenges our comfort zone. Regina, a teacher from Austin, shared that for years she felt restless, as if something was missing in her life. She prayed for direction, but everything seemed nebulous. Gradually, she began to realize her talent for writing and how it touched people. Small comments from friends, unexpected opportunities to share her texts, everything began to point to a path. Today, in addition to being a teacher, she is a writer and says she never imagined she would find so much fulfillment in this mission that God gradually revealed. The third sign revealed by Pope John Paul II is the changes in relationships in our lives. He taught, when people begin to drift away or new connections arise unexpectedly, God is preparing your social environment for the next phase of your journey. This process, which is often painful, is essential for our spiritual growth. Think of Paul, a businessman from Miami. For years, he maintained the same friendships, people he had known since college. Suddenly, he began to feel a natural distancing without fights or resentments. At the same time, new friends appeared in his life, people with values more aligned with his faith. Looking back, he realized that God was preparing him for a new, spiritual phase, surrounding him with people who would support him in his growth in faith. The Pope explained that this process of social pruning doesn't mean we should reject people or end relationships abruptly. It's a natural movement orchestrated by God to put us in the right environment for the next chapter of our lives. Sometimes, people who were important in one phase need to give way to new connections that will help us in the next stage. How do you identify this sign? Observe when long-standing friendships begin to dissolve naturally without conflict. At the same time, new people enter your life, often in surprising ways, bringing perspectives and opportunities that align with the direction you feel God is showing you. Anne-Marie, a nurse from Dallas, shared that she began to feel a distancing from the colleagues she used to go out with on weekends. Simultaneously, she met a prayer group in her parish and felt an immediate connection. These new friendships led her to volunteer work with people in need, something that transformed her life. Today, she understands that God was reorganizing her relationships to prepare her for her true purpose. This sign also manifests itself in deeper relationships. Often, God removes potential partners who wouldn't be suitable for us, preserving us for the right person He has prepared. What seems like rejection or loneliness may actually be divine protection. The fourth sign that Pope John Paul II taught is his intense trials and temptations. He said, "The most severe trials often precede the greatest blessings." When it seems that everything is against you, know that the enemy is trying to prevent what God is about to accomplish in your life. These moments of testing are like the fire that purifies gold, removing impurities and strengthening our faith. I am reminded of the story of Mary Ann, a young mother from Denver. She was about to start a ministry for single mothers when she faced a series of problems. Her child got sick, she lost her job, and her house flooded. Everything seemed to indicate that she should give up on the project, but she persisted in prayer, and after overcoming these challenges, her ministry flourished, helping hundreds of women. The trials had strengthened her faith and testimony. The Pope explained that these intense trials are often spiritual attacks designed to discourage us just when we are about to enter a new phase of blessings. The enemy, seeing what God is preparing, intensifies his efforts to make us give up on the verge of victory. How to recognize this sign? When obstacles arise disproportionately or unusually, especially after you make a decision aligned with God's will, it may be an indication that you are on the right path. It seems contradictory, but trials can confirm that you are following in the right direction, as the enemy wouldn't bother attacking a path that leads to nothing important. Peter, a teacher from Chicago, decided to create a Bible study group at his university. Immediately, he faced resistance from colleagues, inexplicable administrative problems, and even a sudden health crisis. He persevered, and today his group has transformed the lives of dozens of students. The oppositions were signs that his project had great spiritual potential. It's important to understand that not every difficulty is a spiritual attack. Sometimes we face the natural consequences of our choices or simply the challenges of life. Wisdom lies in discerning when trials are divine tests or spiritual oppositions, and when they are just results of our own decisions. If you are enjoying these revelations and want to continue receiving content that strengthens your spiritual life, be sure to subscribe to our channel right now. We have much more to share about how to recognize the presence of God in your life. The fifth sign that Pope John Paul II taught us to recognize is inner peace during the storms of life. He stated, "The inexplicable serenity amidst chaos is a sign of the divine presence. This peace transcends human understanding and testifies that God is guarding your heart." It's a supernatural tranquility that doesn't make sense given the circumstances. I know the story of Lucy, a businesswoman from Seattle who faced the bankruptcy of her business during the pandemic. While many around her were in despair in similar situations, she felt an inexplicable peace. Even without knowing how she would pay the bills next month, she was able to sleep peacefully. This peace kept her lucid to make wise decisions, and in less than a year, she had rebuilt her professional life in a new segment, much more aligned with her values and talents. The Pope explained that this peace is not denial of reality or lack of concern. It's a spiritual gift, a divine protection for our mind and heart in times of crisis. It's as if God puts an invisible shield around us, preventing fear and anxiety from paralyzing us. How do you identify this sign? When you face a situation that would normally cause despair, but inexplicably feel calm and mental clarity, recognize this as a mark of God's presence. This peace is usually accompanied by an inner certainty that somehow everything will be all right, even without seeing the complete solution. Francis, a father from New York, lost his job just when his wife was pregnant with their third child. The situation seemed hopeless, but he felt a peace that he couldn't even explain to his worried wife. This serenity kept him confident and open to opportunities that arose. In a few weeks, he received 3 job offers, one of them much better than his previous job. That peace was a sign that God was working behind the scenes. This inner peace also has a powerful effect on the people around us. When we remain serene in the midst of the storm, our testimony becomes more impactful. As the Pope said, "There is no more eloquent sermon than the peace of a Christian amidst chaos." This serenity becomes a beacon for others who are lost in the darkness of fear and uncertainty. The 6th sign revealed by Pope John Paul II is the conviction to change. He taught, "When God places in your heart a persistent desire for transformation, this is no coincidence. This inner drive to modify something in our lives, a habit, a relationship, a professional situation, often comes directly from the Holy Spirit, guiding us to greater alignment with the divine will." Think of Henry, a successful executive from Boston. He had a great salary, prestige, and stability, but for months he felt a growing restlessness, an inexplicable desire to drop everything and dedicate himself to missionary work. It didn't make logical sense, but the conviction only grew stronger. When he finally followed this calling, he discovered a fulfillment that money and status had never provided. Today, he coordinates social projects that impact thousands of lives. The Pope explained that this inner conviction differs from passing impulses or momentary emotions. It's a persistent calling that, even when we try to ignore it, keeps coming back to our mind and heart. It's as if God is gently but consistently pushing us in the direction of His greater plan. How do you recognize this sign? True divine conviction has some distinctive characteristics. It persists over time, rather than being a momentary impulse. It brings peace when we think about following it, even if the path is challenging. It usually leads us out of our comfort zone, but toward growth. And it's often confirmed by external circumstances or the advice of wise people. Julia, a university professor from San Diego, felt for years a growing conviction to write a book sharing her journey of faith. She resisted, feeling inadequate for such a task, but the impulse didn't disappear. When she finally started writing, unexpected doors opened. Her book has already helped thousands of people find hope in difficult times. That persistent conviction was the voice of God guiding her to a greater purpose. It's important to note that not every desire for change comes from God. Sometimes our own desires or external influences can push us in the wrong directions. Therefore, the Pope always emphasized discernment. Test every conviction with prayer, study of the Word, and wise counsel. The true divine calling will withstand this scrutiny. If this content is illuminating your understanding of how God works in your life, be sure to subscribe to our channel right now. We have many more powerful revelations to share in the coming weeks. The 7th sign that Pope John Paul II taught us to recognize is divinely orchestrated events. He explained that chance encounters, surprising coincidences, and inexplicable synchronicities are often the hand of God organizing circumstances for our good. These are those moments when we realize that there is something greater than chance at work. Consider the story of Teresa, a young woman from Orlando who missed her bus to a job interview. Frustrated, she took another bus that would drop her off near the location. On this alternate route, she met an old college classmate who worked at the company where Teresa was being interviewed. This friend personally introduced her to the director, which was crucial for her hiring. What seemed like a setback turned into a divine opportunity. The Pope explained that God, in His infinite wisdom, organizes seemingly random encounters, connections, and events that are, in fact, fundamental pieces in the puzzle of His plan for our lives. Like a skillful conductor, he coordinates people, times, and places to create the perfect symphony. How do you identify this sign? Pay attention when unusual coincidences begin to accumulate. When you meet exactly the right person at the right time, or when a series of improbable events align perfectly to create an opportunity or solution, there is a high chance that God is orchestrating the circumstances. Michael, a doctor from Los Angeles, says he decided to change his usual route to work because of a traffic jam. On the new route, he stopped at a coffee shop he had never frequented before. There, he overheard a conversation about a medical care project in underserved communities. Intrigued, he joined the conversation and today coordinates that same project, which has become his greatest professional accomplishment. A simple, seemingly random change of route completely changed the course of his professional and spiritual life. The fascinating thing about these events orchestrated by God is that we often only perceive their true meaning when we look back. As the Pope said, divine providence is best understood in the rearview mirror of life. That which seemed insignificant or even negative at the moment is later revealed as a crucial piece in the divine plan. These divinely orchestrated events often come in sequences, creating a domino effect of blessings. One apparent coincidence leads to another and another, forming a path that clearly could not have been planned by ourselves. It's the tangible evidence that a higher intelligence is coordinating our journey. A fundamental aspect that Pope John Paul II always emphasized in his teachings was the importance of patience and perseverance while awaiting the full manifestation of God's plans. He said, "God's timing is perfect. Do not move ahead or lag behind, but remain attentive and receptive to his voice." This waiting, taught the Holy Father, is not passive, but an active time of preparation and growth. I remember the story of Joseph, a farmer from Iowa. For years, he prayed asking God to expand his small property so that he could better support his family. Nothing happened, and he began to question whether God had forgotten him. During this waiting period, however, Joseph learned new agricultural techniques, participated in local cooperatives, and developed sustainable cultivation methods. When the opportunity finally arose to acquire the neighboring land, he was much more prepared to manage a larger property. The waiting time had actually been a time of preparation. The Pope explained that God often makes us wait, not to frustrate us, but to properly prepare us for what is to come, like a potter who patiently works the clay before placing it in the kiln. God molds our character and develops our skills during the waiting periods. How do you live this waiting time productively? The Pope taught us to transform waiting into preparation. Instead of just being anxious about what God will do, we should ask, how can I prepare myself for what God is planning? Thus, waiting becomes a time of growth, learning, and spiritual strengthening. Rachel, a young woman from Tallahassee, felt called to missionary work, but all doors seemed closed. During 5 years of waiting, she studied theology, learned a new language, and developed leadership skills in her local church. When the opportunity finally arose to serve abroad, she was much better equipped than she would have been 5 years earlier. The apparent delay was, in fact, part of God's perfect plan. Pope John Paul II also reminded us that God never abandons his projects. If he started a work in you, he will certainly complete it. This promise gives us strength to persevere, even when the path seems uncertain or when the trials are intense. We are not walking alone, and the final destination is guaranteed by divine faithfulness. If these teachings have touched your heart and strengthened your faith, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Together, we will continue exploring the profound truths that Pope John Paul II shared to guide us on our spiritual journey. We have reached the moment to reflect deeply on how to apply these 7 signs in our daily lives. Pope John Paul II always emphasized that spiritual knowledge is only valuable when we transform it into concrete action. Let's see then how we can live more attentive to these divine signs. First, start by keeping a spiritual journal. Write down situations in which you notice these signs manifesting. That door that closed inexplicably, the peace you felt in a moment of crisis, a seemingly chance encounter that changed something in your life. Over time, you will see patterns emerging, revealing how God has worked consistently in your journey. Clara, a teacher from Philadelphia, started this practice and was impressed to realize how many coincidences occurred in her life. When I started recording these moments, I realized they weren't random events, but a sequence carefully orchestrated by God, she says. This record strengthened her faith and helped her trust more in divine guidance. Second, practice what the Pope called the sacred pause. When faced with an important decision, resist the urge to act immediately. Pause, pray, and ask, "Lord, what are you showing me in this situation?" Often in these pauses, we can perceive signs that would go unnoticed in the rush of everyday life. Third, share your insights with mature believers. The Pope always emphasized the importance of community in the spiritual journey. Sometimes others can see signs in our lives that we ourselves don't perceive, or they can help us interpret correctly what we are experiencing. Ricardo, a businessman from Houston, was about to close an important deal when he felt an inexplicable unease. When sharing this with his prayer group, a friend commented that he had noticed several red flags in that opportunity that Ricardo hadn't noticed. This conversation led him to investigate further and discover serious problems that would have caused great losses. Fourth, develop what the Pope called a contemplative gaze, the ability to see beyond the surface of events. In each situation, ask yourself, what could God be teaching me here? How does this connect with other areas of my life? This practice helps us see the larger tapestry that God is weaving, instead of just the isolated threads. Pope John Paul II also taught us to practice gratitude for the signs already received. He said, "Gratitude opens the eyes of the soul to new divine signs." When we recognize and give thanks for the divine guidance we have already received, we become more sensitive to the new directions that God wants to show us. Finally, remember what the Pope always emphasized. These signs are not ends in themselves, but indicators that point us to a deeper relationship with God. The ultimate goal is not just to recognize signs, but to know better the Creator who sends them. As he said, each divine sign is an invitation to a more intimate encounter with the one who loves us infinitely. By implementing these practices in your life, you will discover a new dimension in your spiritual journey. Everyday events will gain deeper meaning, and you will walk with greater confidence, knowing that you are not alone and that there is a divine plan guiding your steps. Dear friends, we have come to the end of this journey through the 7 signs that reveal God's plan in our lives. But in reality, we are only beginning a new phase of our spiritual walk, a phase of greater awareness and sensitivity to the divine presence in everyday life. If the words of Pope John Paul II touched your heart today, don't keep this treasure to yourself. Share these truths with those who need guidance and hope. Many people around you are seeking answers, trying to understand God's ways in their lives. We would love to know how this message impacted you. Which of the 7 signs have you experienced in your life? Was there any teaching that illuminated situations you are facing now? Share in the comments below. Your testimony may be exactly what someone needs to read today. If you felt that this content brought light to your spiritual journey, help us spread this message. Share this video with friends and family. As Pope John Paul II said, faith grows when it is shared. A simple share can start a profound transformation in the life of another person. We are building a community of people who want to live more aware of the divine presence and guidance in their lives. If you are not yet part of it, this is the perfect time to join us. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos filled with wisdom and spiritual guidance. In the coming weeks, we will continue to explore the profound teachings of Pope John Paul II on spiritual discernment, transformative prayer, and how to live a life of divine purpose. These are contents that have the power to completely transform your relationship with God and your perception of daily events. Remember the words of the Holy Father. Do not be afraid to trust in God's plan, even when you do not fully understand it. Start applying what you have learned today. Observe your life with new eyes, attentive to the divine signs that are all around you. And next week, come back here to continue this journey with us. We want to hear your experiences.